Great.
Great. Recording's on.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the kickoff call for the Impact Ventures theme. We're going to take you through some of our thoughts about what we're going to do and also do some question and answers through this session. So what we're going to go through today, we're going to do a bit of an outline now of the whole session. We're going to introduce the Arcana team to you all. I'm going to talk a little bit about Arcana's way of working and some of our values. And we're going to talk about exactly what we want to achieve on this call. Then we want to just touch on the link between the Impact Ventures theme and the Impact Accelerators theme, and talk you through the results of the survey that most of you were able to fill out. So thank you for those who did that. And then we'll talk you through the proposed approach that we're going to take, which will be done by Clemmy. And then we've got some open space for questions and answers and suggestions from people. And then Nicola will take us through what the next steps are going to be after this call. So we've got the Arcana team. Many of you will have met myself and Guy in Singapore. For those who don't know, my name is Chris. I'm a consultant here in the Arcana team based in New Zealand. We are in Wellington today, which is in kind of the middle of New Zealand. It's the bottom of the South Island. And I'll be supporting on this program and on the others, but mostly it will be led by Clemmy and Nicola.
So hi, I'm Clemmy Baker. I'm a social impact consultant. I've been working with organisations for years, helping them understand their impact and how they can measure what they're doing so they can improve what their impact is.
Hi, I'm Nicola Morgan. I'm an associate with the international team here at Arcana. I've been working in international development for about 20 years all over the globe. And my role on this project would be to support Clemmy, who's our technical lead, and do a lot of the program management.
Kia ora everyone, my name is Guy Redding. I think a lot of you have met me in Singapore with Chris. I'm the Director for International Development at Arcana, and so have oversight of the work that we are doing on frontier incubators, including the venture impact measurements work, as well as the one-on-one support that we're providing to some of the accelerators and incubators in the Asia-Pacific region.
Thanks, everyone. So you'll get a chance to get to know us all more through these webinars, through the seminars, and through any one-to-one contact we might have with any of you. Next, we were just going to touch a little bit on Arcana's values, because they're really important to how we think about how we do work. So the first value we hold is a Māori word. Māori is the native language of New Zealand, and that word is ako. And ako, in its simplest form, refers to learning, but it also talks about the relationship between a teacher and a student. And what it talks about is that there's no one without the other, that there's a relationship between student and teacher, and that the two go on a journey together. And the second part of that is that we recognize that there's no absolute line between student and teacher. So everybody on this call has already experience with impact, has already got lots of experience with working with ventures potentially. And we want to recognize and honor that as well. So as we approach this project, we want to give the opportunity for everyone to share their knowledge, and there'll be lots of opportunities for you to do that through this program. Second value we have is he tangata, which is a word that means people. So we recognize that when we engage in projects like this, we're working with people. It's not with a faceless organization. So we always want to be focusing on that relationship and building that relationship. And finally, bold action. So for us as an organization, we like to see that we are making a difference in the world. So working on a project like this is really exciting for us, because we get the sense and the feeling that you're all doing really, really interesting things. And what we can do by helping magnify your impact, magnify the work that you're doing, and thereby that makes it clear to us that we're actually making a difference in the world as well, rather than just sitting talking about these things. The aims for this call, we're going to share a draft outline of the topics and the modules that we think should exist in this program, and get feedback from you for incorporation into that design, and also for you to understand the difference between the impact for ventures and the impact for accelerator courses that are run. We know that there's a lot of crossover for you all in that, and so we wanted to make sure that you were able to understand how they related to each other and make sure that which of those courses is right for you, or whether both of them is right for you. I'll dive into that now, I think. There you go. So there are these two separate programs that you've been invited to be part of. The first that Arcana is leading is the Impact for Ventures program. And what we intend to do on that program is help build your capability to teach ventures how to do their own impact management and impact measurement. The second program, which is being led by Spring and supported by Arcana, is Impact for Accelerators. And that program is about how you as accelerators measure your own impact. So there's lots of crossover between the two, and there'll be lots of shared thinking between the two. But we just wanted to highlight that difference. So if you think about the two different options, there's, do you want to teach impact to other people, or do you want to measure your own impact? So in this program, we'll be dealing with the first, which is how do you teach others to measure their impact? Next, we're going to take you through the summary of the survey that we asked you to complete.
So I'd like to repeat what Chris said, which is thank you to the 10 of you who actually did the survey. I thought that was a really good response rate. We have 14 organisations and 16 people from those organisations currently showing an interest in being on this course for Impact for Ventures. So a response rate of 10 was fabulous. We were trying to get a little bit of background information so we could draft together what our modules might be, so we could come into this phone call with some ideas for discussion rather than a blank page. So we asked about 3 or 4 questions, and the first question was whether your organisation is currently providing training for ventures in impact measurement. And as you can see on your screens, only 4 said yes and 6 said no, not currently. For those organisations who are currently providing training, they were able to answer more than one response. Most actually are providing training in 2 of these areas, hence we have 11 responses in total. But the majority are in idea stage and startup stage, with 3 responses being currently providing training on impact and at the growth stage. We asked people, is it their priority to design an approach from scratch or to improve the existing approach? Not surprisingly, with many people not currently doing impact training, we had 60% wanting to design an approach from scratch and 40% wanting to improve on their existing approach. Okay, right, looking up my PowerPoint thing. I had a PowerPoint that summarised it. Sorry, one moment, I just want to open one more slide. Okay, while he's doing that, what we concluded, basically based on this, we asked a 4th question, but the results were open-ended, so I sort of put them into a PowerPoint briefly. And this is asking people where they really want to prioritise the content of the training. And based on that, I think we had 2 wanting training at idea stage, or what one person said get-go stage, so I think that's idea stage. I think we had 4 wanting training at early stage. It'd be better if you can see this in case my accent's a little difficult to follow. So the summary was 6 want to develop a new approach and 4 want to improve their existing. 6 want idea early stage startup focus and 2 want growth stage focus. And everyone seemed to be saying they were looking for a curriculum approach that had workshops with coaching sessions. So based on this sort of quick dipstick piece of research, we've decided to present to you as an idea that we will target the content more at the idea startup phase, not so much the growth stage, but that this approach will be fine to accommodate participants who have existing modules that they would like to improve, and those who do not have existing training materials and are looking to develop from scratch. So at this point, I'll hand over to Clemmy to talk about the 5 topics that we are suggesting for your feedback and our approach for the delivery.
Hi. So you've got the high level topics there that we think are the best way to support you to develop a new approach if that's what you're wanting, but we hope that it will also be useful for those of you who are wanting to refine your current approach. Also, we think that a lot of this content is relevant whether you're supporting ventures at startup phase or any of the stages. So we're intending for it to be useful for those early stage ones, but we hope it will also be useful for more advanced social enterprises. So we're focusing on what most of you are wanting, but hopefully the others will still benefit. So the first topic there is why measure impact. We're interested in talking to you about things that will help you understand the value of teaching social enterprises about impact measurement, but also put you in a position to communicate to the social enterprises why they should measure impact. So we'll talk you through some of the things that we use and some of the things that are best practice around what's valuable for a social enterprise in measuring impact, such as how to refine your focus as a strategic tool so that you're clear on what impact you want to have and you can make decisions for your organization based on that clarity. Things like being able to prove your impact so that you can communicate better with stakeholders, including funders and the communities that social enterprises are working within. And being able to, importantly, improve on the impact that you're having. So with that clarity and with the measurement that sits alongside that clarity, you're able to see whether what you're doing is working or not so that you can refine your process and improve the effectiveness of the social enterprise. So that first topic, why measure impact, is kind of exploring the value of measuring impact. It also will touch on how you can align with other frameworks like the SDGs and align with different governments and funders and the work that they're seeking to achieve through supporting social enterprises and of course consumers. So the second topic there, the theory of change. This is pretty broadly used as the foundation for measuring impact. The term theory of change in my mind is interchangeable with logic model, program logic. There's all sorts of words to describe a framework that's essentially a way of representing how what you do leads to the positive social or environmental impact that you're trying to have. And importantly, within it, it includes a compelling logic, so a hypothesis of the change that you want to see, a logic of how what you do leads to this positive change. So that theory of change is the really important grounding foundation for what you will measure to then be able to represent whether you're having impact or not. We'll talk about the role that the theory of change plays in helping you refine that focus and identify the logic of how what you're doing leads to positive change. We'll also talk about the role the theory of change has as being the foundation for measurement, and how you will then take components of the theory of change as being the parts that you will measure. We'll also talk about different kinds of theories of change. How will you use theory of change if you're a social enterprise doing fundraising versus a social enterprise that achieves impact through employing people, for example. We'll talk about how to align your theory of change with different funders' expectations so you might be working, your social enterprises may be operating in an environment where funders are all wanting to invest in the SDGs, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals. and how can you design a theory of change that aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals. We'll talk about the importance of engaging stakeholders in the development of the theory of change and how it can be a really useful tool and ongoing consultation and engagement with stakeholders to bring them on the journey of the impact that you're having. So the next topic there is teaching and facilitating. How can you teach this and facilitate the process with social enterprises? So having explored the theory of change and the role it plays in impact measurement, we'll talk to you about how you can run a theory of change workshop and play the role of a critical friend and challenge the logic within a theory of change for a social enterprise. In my mind, you can do that whether you have subject matter expertise in the area that the social enterprise is operating in or not. You're playing the role of being that critical friend and challenging whether what they say sounds logical, because if it doesn't sound logical to you, then it's unlikely to sound logical to other stakeholders like consumers. So we'll talk to you about how you can play that facilitator role. We'll also talk to you about how you can teach others how to run a theory of change workshop. So some of your social enterprises, you might not have the time to run a theory of change workshop with them, so you can give them the tools so that they can run it themselves. Are we good?
Good.
Cool. So we'll also, in that teaching and facilitating, we'll hopefully be able to give you some templates for writing up the theory of change, just some simple one-pagers that kind of simplify the process. There's a lot of complexity around this, and that complexity overwhelms people sometimes, so it becomes too hard, and so people don't just get started. And one of our mantras in this is just get started. Just write something down, have a starting point, and that's your working hypothesis that you can then use to build on. So we'll have some one-pager examples and templates that you can use to capture the theory of change, or that you can share with social enterprises so that they can capture their own theories of change. So the fourth one there, gathering data, and that one will explore how you take the theory of change, identify within the theory of change which are the priority outcomes, which things change because of the activities that the social enterprise is doing that lead to the positive impact that you want to see. So that's about, we call them the priority outcomes, without which the social enterprise is unlikely to achieve the ultimate impact that it wants to have. So once you've identified those priority outcomes, we'll talk about how you identify indicators to measure whether those things are happening or not. You might have proxies that can be used to be a clue about whether that change is happening or not. We'll then talk about how you can capture data against those indicators using simple survey tools or other data capture opportunities like number of visits to a website, for example, operating within the constraints that social enterprises often have around not having many resources to do extensive data capture. So we're aiming in all of this to be quite pragmatic, and we're going for the simpler approach, with the idea being that if the approach is simple enough, then more people will do it, and it won't represent a huge data collection burden for the organisation. So that part's about the indicators, putting those indicators and those tools within a measurement framework. So just a simple Excel spreadsheet with headers saying you'll collect this data to show you what's happening with this indicator. You'll ask these people the question, you'll do it every 6 months, and you'll store the data in this place. That's that kind of thing. So then finally, the last topic there, using the data. The point of all of this is to actually use it. So what does that look like? How do you analyze the data so that you can use it for reporting or storytelling? So how can you capture both the qualitative and the quantitative to make sure that you're using it so that the social enterprises are using it to tell their story of change as effectively as possible? importantly, how can the data be used for implementation? So for making decisions for the organisation based on the impact that they want to have, and seeing it really as a learning tool and a strategic tool for decision making. And how can you ensure that the processes and the tools that have been identified in the earlier sections are used by the organisation, and all of the staff and the stakeholders in the organisation, in the social enterprise, buy into the process and adopt a learning culture.
Thanks, Tammy.
Clemmy, do we want to talk too about the number of webinars, seminars, and sort of assignment approach we've done, just in terms of how that's a lot of content over that amount of time we've got?
Yeah, so I kind of talked through a lot of stuff then, and you can imagine if each of those is 90 minutes, that's a lot of content as well. So in between those, we'll be issuing, we'll identify opportunities to have a go. So we'll have assignments through it, and we'll try and match people up so that you can do the assignments together, and play that role of critical friend for each other, so you can practice being the facilitator on different social enterprises. And we'll try and be thoughtful about how we align organisations in doing that. So we, for this process, we invite you all to think about a social enterprise that you want to use as your case study running through this process. So we'd encourage you to think of a social enterprise that is achieving impact through the work that they do, as opposed to a social enterprise that is running a business to raise money to donate that money to someone else. You can use theory of change for both, and we'll talk about how you do it for both of those, but just for the purposes of this exercise, it's easier to do it with ones that are having impact through the work that they do. It doesn't matter if it's one that you're currently working with or one that you just know about. Just think of a case study that would be interesting for you to use as you run through, because sometimes this stuff seems more real when you've got an example in your mind. And it also, you'll need to have a case study for some of the assignments. If anyone has any questions on whether you may have a social enterprise that's jumped into your mind as I've said that. If anyone wants to check with us whether they think it would be a good social enterprise to use as a case study, then please feel free to ask the question.
Yeah. So the Slack channel would be a great opportunity to do that. The Slack channel will be the key way that we communicate with everybody between webinars. So I think most people have joined that, but if you haven't, make sure you jump onto Slack channel, or if you're having any trouble with that, Will or the Frontier Incubators team can help you out with that.
Questions?
Yeah, questions. Should we just ask? So how do those 5 topics sound? Do they sound useful for people? Are they aligned with what your expectations were? If you don't want to ask the question over the channel, then feel free to write in the chat box as well.
For us, that sounds great. Thanks. We're also, we haven't done this so far, so starting from scratch is what we need as well. And it sounds very thorough and interesting, so thank you.
Great. Thanks, Debbie.
Look, in lieu of anyone else jumping in, I'll just say, look, it looks really comprehensive and really broad. So thanks, Chris and team. And yeah, really excited to see how this unfolds.
Thanks, Will.
Great.
How do people feel that because we've got 5 modules of 90 minutes and we couldn't cover everything from ideas to early stage to growth, are people comfortable with the idea that we're going to focus the content more at the ideas and early stage level?
And if you've just got a small thought, like you just want to say yes or no, then again, feel free to use the chat box.
I think it's still, now I'm just talking to my colleague, but I think that the methodology is useful for any stage. You'd hope that growth stage have more clarity around what impact they're trying to have, but it's not always the case. So it's sort of not necessarily where the organization's at, it's where they are at on their impact journey. And yeah, a growth social enterprise can be pretty basic on their on their impact journey. Probably what we're focusing on mostly is the really pragmatic get started approach, rather than the deep dive kind of social return on investment analysis end of the spectrum, where we'd be coming up with financial proxies to align with your priority outcomes and indicators. We're not going to go to that really heavy end of the measurement spectrum.
I think there's a lot of people echoing what you're saying, Clem, and saying that there's this notion that, yeah, like impact and the logic model, the theory of change really needs to be embedded from the start, right? And good impact measurement practices are things that you want to do from the beginning. So whether it's idea stage or like those same things are applicable for later stages as well. There's a lot of chat kind of saying that, yeah, people are comfortable with that. There's one question coming through from Mai just about how impact is defined for Arcana and for this course.
So we think of impact as the positive social and environmental change an organisation is seeking to have. We normally start by talking about that shift from activities to outcomes. And when I say impact, there's sort of a blurred line between you've got your short-term outcomes, medium-term outcomes, long-term outcomes, and they sort of bleed into impact. So I don't really get too worried about the delineation between long-term outcomes and impact. It's just, what is the long-term goal, and where are you ending your theory of change or your logic model, essentially. But well, I welcome any thoughts on an alternative view on that.
Thanks for that note about the microphone. We've had a problem with it where our microphone is switched off, so it's the computer, so we'll need to pass the computer around. But Clemmy.
Okay, sorry, I'll be loud at too.
Okay.
Is it? I just like to ask a question: whether any of the people out there think there are any gaps, any significant gaps in what's being proposed. Sort of happy to take that on board and see whether we could integrate that. So now's your chance to speak up and identify if there's anything coming into this today that you thought would be covered and it isn't, then please let us know.
I have a sorry, I've got a bit of a cold. I have a quick question. See, the focus is on kind of how we can deliver workshops, which is great. But I was wondering if there's also going to be like some sort of printed document that we can share with teams that maybe just want to get a rough idea or an overview first. If that's also going to be part of what we're doing.
What are your thoughts? So,
Very microphone's gone.
Very technical here. Yeah, so the focus sort of is on how to deliver workshops, a little bit on how to facilitate and how to actually do the process. We'll take on that feedback about how it would be useful to have a handout. We've previously developed a pretty comprehensive one of those, but I think we'll think about whether we can do a lighter touch version of that, and some sort of a 5-pager on how to do this yourselves, that they then that can be a starting point and explore further. Does that sound like the sort of level of detail you'd want to be handing over?
Yeah, that sounds perfect, especially for maybe times when we have kind of less capacity to be delivering the workshops, for people that kind of want something now rather than waiting till the next opportunity.
Yeah,
that
sure.
would be really great.
Cool.
Other gaps people would like to see covered?
I don't know if it's a gap so much as just there's something about good impact measurement really aligning with what you as a business do measure just for the purposes of good operational hygiene, really. And I assume that that's kind of somewhere in there, and not so much a specific thing to cover, but I think that's one of the really compelling things about good impact measurement, specifically the social enterprises, right, is how it kind of just links to good operational practices, and how it cannot become, as you said earlier, Clem, a kind of heavy data collection exercise, which people just really don't have the capacity for largely.
Yeah. And so I think that's that fifth module of how do you embed it? Like, what does this look like implementing it? And how can you really use it as a strategic design and operational tool? So some of the organizations that we see do it best, they frequently refer to their theory of change and the latest data that they've seen when they're designing, redesigning, revisiting their program. I think for social enterprises, the impact model and the business model should be seen as equally important documents. And so, yeah, I think that fifth module will explore the role that of impact management. So it's not just about impact measurement and how you can measure what you're doing, but how you can really manage to impact. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely does.
Cool.
And then someone's asked about some case studies. So I think you want to talk about the use of case studies through the
Yeah, sure.
process?
We'll definitely use case studies. So I'll try to not just use New Zealand examples. I previously worked in Australia. I can use some of them. Got one from Samoa. So we've got, we'll talk about a relatively wide range of organisations and how they've used it. Some of them are using it in a pretty light touch way. They're all using it for different things, different stakeholders. And so case studies are good for seeing how you would design it differently depending on your audience and the need for having that clarity. So for example, we've got one where they are really heavily reliant on stakeholder funding, and so they want to align their impact story with the goals of those funders, compared to an organisation where they see their key stakeholder as the community that they work with, and so they want it to be an engagement tool that they use for kind of like ongoing keeping themselves honest and empowering their community to hold them accountable to what they've said that they're going to do. So yes, we will use case studies.
All right, thank you. All right, we haven't had any new questions come up, so we'll give one last chance for any questions via video, sound. Okay, move on to the next steps.
Right. Okay. I think first of all, Will, you'll be making this recording available to everyone in the Slack channel. Is that correct? So I think there might be people who may want to go back and go over that content area again, because it was a lot of content explained. I think the things, looking at the aim, I think one of the first things we'd like each of you to do is think about, now you've heard a bit more of the proposed content, does this feel like the right course for you? And if it does, also, do you feel there might be others within your organisation that may benefit from joining you on the course? If you're joined with somebody from your own organisation, you'll be able to do the assignments together, etc., etc. But as Clemmy said, we will bounce ideas and bounce peer learning around, and we'll match based on a number of criteria that will will evolve as we start to get to know you better and understand what your needs are. But the whole idea is we will really try to use a peer learning as much as possible. So I believe, well, it's not too late for others to sign up from your countries if you think that's going to be a benefit to do it in a group together. If you think of additional questions or concerns or ideas, please fire those to us. The first webinar isn't for another month. It's on March the 14th. So we'll be working on the materials in the meantime, so it's not too late to get your feedback to us. We will also be sending out before then a sort of a baseline questionnaire, so we can do a baseline and a follow-up. So expect that in your inbox, but probably a lot closer to March the 14th than to now.
You can't expect to join a session on measuring impact without us sending a survey to try and measure our impact.
And I think that's pretty much
Yep.
that's pretty much it. Does anyone here have anything to add?
So based on the feedback now, we'll finalise the modules, and we'll send a more comprehensive description of them other than that half line of describing each of the modules. So if any of it wasn't clear, we'll capture it and more fully and send it to you as a list.
But our main communication will be through Slack.
Yep.
So it'll be good for those of you not yet on Slack to get onto Slack, as Chris did at the beginning.
And as Chris said, if there's any issues accessing Slack for yourselves or your team members, please just let me know.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all for joining us at various different times of the day in different parts of the world. We are really excited about this program. Impact is one of the things that we are obviously very passionate about at Arcana. So the opportunity to share some of that passion and some of the learning is really exciting for us. We're very much looking forward to the next few months of delivering this. Great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.